Rick Revel, Mr. History, brought to you in part by Dixie Gun Works in Union City, Tennessee.
We're camping tonight on the old campground. Give us a song to cheer our weary hearts.
Gettysburg's guns are still, and the dead sleep on. America's most famous battleground is a camp again, with a road dividing the blue and gray. There is no other dividing line now, as 2,500 veterans gather from north and south to mark the 75th anniversary of America's Armageddon.
Hello! All right. That's the rebel yell.
In 1913 and 1938, a grand celebration and reunion was held in Pennsylvania to commemorate the 50th and 75th anniversaries of the Battle of Gettysburg. Confederate and Union veterans traveled from all across the United States to attend these events that were being held in their honor. Massive crowds of family and spectators gathered to see what would happen when the arch enemies would meet once again. The highlight for many is when President Roosevelt came to the 1938 event to meet some of the veterans, and to also dedicate a new peace monument on the grounds of the Gettysburg National Military Park.
Veterans of the blue and the gray of the United States, I accept this monument in the spirit of brotherhood and peace.
Hearts would melt as onlookers witnessed something amazing. The bitter rivals cast away their differences and found a common place. A place of solace on the grounds where many of their friends had died. As hands were being shook and war stories being swapped between the blue and the gray, the frail warriors made it very clear. They were all Americans who had fought for a cause they believed in. They treated each other with respect and with honor. But since the death of the last Civil War veteran in 1958, political winds have changed, and American history is being rewritten to fit those ideologies. This show, along with the next episode, will be a two-part series at a place where Confederate heritage is being preserved. Join us on History Highway as we take a tour of the National Confederate Museum in Columbia, Tennessee.
One, two, three. We're gonna drive in every day, and somewhere along the way, there's a road sign with a story from the past. History is everywhere, and I'm gonna take you there. So buckle up tight, we're going there real fast. So take a ride down the history highway. We're headed right to the days of old. So take a ride down the history highway. I got the pedal to the metal and I'm letting this Chevy roll.
It doesn't matter if you're a reenactor who loves the smell of black powder in the morning on the battlefield, or a collector who admires the craftsmanship of a well-made weapon of old. Dixie Gun Works has a Pedersoli just for you. And not only does Dixie Gun Works have a warehouse full of Pedersoli reproduction firearms, they have an incredible collection of antique firearms. Inside the pages of their huge catalog, you will find gun parts, shooting accessories, reenactor clothing, camping supplies, and even some big guns if you like to burn a lot of powder. Dixie Gun Works is located in Union City, Tennessee. But for your convenience, visit our online store at www.dixiegunworks.com or call 1-800-238-6785. Back several years ago, I had the opportunity to make a small movie called Shiloh, the Many Faces of War. It was actually around a reenactment that took place several years ago, and this house behind me, it was actually the home that my character would dwell in the movie. It's at Elm Springs, Columbia, Tennessee. The house itself has an incredible history. That's the reason I wanted to film here. See, that house not only has been the headquarters for SCV for several years, Sons of Confederate Veterans, but the history behind the house is pretty incredible. During the war between the states, War of Northern Aggression as we like to call it, kind of interesting. The man of the house had gone to war. Lady's here by herself. Her house servants are with her. House servants are black. Very loyal to the family. Union cavalry comes riding through. They're on a pillaging run. The missus of the house, she's already taken all the silver and she's put it and hid it inside the columns of the home. Union soldiers, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for valuables, things they can stuff their pockets with. Well, they got mad. They couldn't find what they was looking for, so they're going to set fire to the home. They take a broom, set fire to the broom, put it in the stairwell inside of the home to burn the house to the ground. The black servants, they saved the day. They put out that fire. Confederate cavalry shows up, chases off the Union cavalry. That's the history behind this house in a nutshell, without getting into greater detail. And off to my right, there's more history. Confederate Museum, the National Confederate Museum, now houses Confederate history. And that's what we're here to talk about today. It's the National Confederate Museum at Columbia, Tennessee. We're very excited to be here in Columbia, Tennessee today at the National Confederate Museum. It's a one-of-a-kind here in Tennessee. It's new to Tennessee. And this gentleman next to me, an old friend of mine, Jason Boshears, is a gentleman that's been part of the Sons of Confederate Veterans for years. He's also been an officer in the Tennessee Division, but now he's the Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. And he's going to give us kind of an idea of the mission of the museum.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you to be a part of it.
And the National Confederate Museum, located on the grounds of historic Elm Springs in Columbia, Tennessee, it does not have a mission. It has missions. There's multiple things that it is going to be doing. It has, well, first of all, this is a true asset in the ability to be able to tell the true story of the Southland.
Right.
When you walk through the museum, you're going to start in 1607, which was really the founding, the starting, the genesis of our country was there. And you're going to walk all the way up through the modern times. Now, yes, we focus on the time between 1860 and 1865, but there was things that happened before then. And we tell the entire story. You're going to hear the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, because it is all history. Yes, and the main thing is to tell history as it was. It does not need to be reinterpreted. It doesn't need any kind of presentation presentism put in,
That's right.
to where you're looking at things with modern eyes, because we wouldn't want that to happen to us 200 years from now.
That's right.
Well, you look how history was, the true facts behind all of it. So it is an asset in the fact that we're going to have artifacts in there.
That's right.
And you'll be able to walk through and see how things were at that time. And then it is going to be able to tell the stories of the soldiers that went and fought, the families that stayed at home, the mothers, the wives, the sweethearts, the ones that had to raise the kids and keep the farms going. And you realize the strength and the value of the Southern woman at that time, the Southern
right.
female, played a huge role in what this country was. And so it's going to be an asset to that as well. You're going to be able to come through, you're going to be able to see artifacts, and you're going to be able to see the stories. And the whole time we are preserving history and telling history as it really was.
That's right.
And that's the point of it. That's the
whole
main
point of it.
mission. You know, we don't have to rewrite anything.
That's right.
We just need to tell the stories, and we need to tell the truth. And that's what the purpose of this is. And it's going to give people an opportunity to come and see for themselves. We're not going to tell you how to think. We're just going to provide you the information and let you make your mind up yourself.
That's right.
Because isn't that America at its finest?
That's America at its finest. And speaking of America at its finest, the Kennedy twins,
Oh, Lord, my goodness.
they're going to be the tour guides. Can you
Okay.
imagine that? They're going to be our tour guides today, and they're going to show us around the museum. And I tell you what, I'm looking forward to it, Jason.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm looking forward to that as well. It's kind of like Elvis showing you around Graceland.
It is.
That's exactly what that is. You cannot beat the Kennedy twins.
Yes.
You don't call them the Kennedy brothers, you call them the Kennedy twins.
That's right.
And they are very good at what they do, and they're true assets of this organization, and they're very good Southern gentlemen.
Yes, they are. And speaking of Southern gentlemen, brother, appreciate
Oh,
you.
thank
You've
you.
always been a gentleman to me, and appreciate your friendship.
And I appreciate everything you're doing for us. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, History Highway will now continue as we go inside the National Confederate Museum.
Enjoy the ride.
Yes, sir.
There is a place, nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost, stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
From the pens of the Kennedy twins comes a new literary composition. The renowned authors of The South Was Right and a dozen more publications have become known for their zeal for conservatism and Southern heritage preservation. In their new book, Jefferson Davis, High Road to Emancipation and Constitutional Government, Johnny and Ron Kennedy hold nothing back. They're quick to point out Davis's high road approach to emancipation, while Lincoln chose the low road. Never afraid of controversy and to go against the grain of the politically correct, the Kennedy twins expose how our constitutional republic of sovereign states has been transformed into a deep state of federal government. To get your copy of the book that defends President Davis and the South, go to www.kennedytwins.com. That's www.kennedytwins.com. This is Mr. Ron, Donnie Kennedy, the Kennedy twins.
There you go.
Doing Southern literature at the best, and I tell you what, we're going to be talking about Southern heritage a little bit. And Ron, you were going to tell me a little bit of how it all began at Jamestown.
Well, you know, the South really has the basis of America. We began in 1607, 13 years before the Pilgrims landed up in New England. And we have at the museum a timeline that goes all the way to the modern era, all around the museum. And we show the beginning of America, the South. We show how the Declaration of Independence was signed. Of course, Southerners were key in that secession movement, the first secession movement when we seceded from Great Britain.
Right.
And we moved all the way through and we talked about slavery as well.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We'll move over to the slavery, but you're also going to talk about how cotton was a huge factor.
Absolute. Cotton and tobacco and rice were major parts of the South's economy. And slavery, of course, is integral to all of that.
It was the labor force at the time.
Right, but it's not the totality of Southern commerce, and that's what we're going to talk about.
And rice, that's part of your country,
that's
down in New
Louisiana,
Orleans.
yes,
sir. Well, let's talk about. Let's go over this way. And I think this is very interesting because a lot of people have one idea or thought about slavery.
Right.
But this, you're going to tell us about sugar trade and a lot of things that introduced slavery to America.
This is one thing that most people think of the South and cotton and slavery together. But actually, it was the sweet tooth of Europe that brought slavery to the Western Hemisphere. Slavery existed for almost 140 years in the Western Hemisphere before cotton was ever planted in the South. And it was in the Caribbean area.
Right.
So sugar brought slavery to the Americas. Now, we have a history of slavery all the way from the beginning of the United States, and this is something interesting. 13 original colonies, English-speaking colonies. Out of those 13 colonies, every one was a slave-holding colony. It wasn't just Southern colonies.
That's correct.
Did you know that slavery actually existed for 100 years longer in Massachusetts than it did in Mississippi? Slavery is a worldwide institution. Blacks, whites, red, yellow, all societies have had slavery. It doesn't belong to Europeans, it doesn't belong to the South. But as we know, looking at the history, cotton was what really brought slavery to the forefront in America.
Because cotton was king.
Cotton was king. And most people will say, well, cotton is how the slave-holding South made their money. True, but also the North was making money off that same slave-grown cotton. And they fought really hard to keep their interest in slave-grown cotton because they was making tons of money.
And Donnie, one of the lesser-known facts, some of the New York merchants were very upset with, and they even considered secession themselves because they were very invested into the cotton industry.
Right. Like I say, the history of slavery is the history of mankind. It's not the history of the South. Unfortunately, in our modern woke society, and that's why this museum that we and the Sons of Confederate Veterans have put together, why we want this museum here, so we'll tell the complete history of the South, including slavery. We don't hide from that. The South is a very diverse area of the country, and we celebrate that diversity. Cotton is part of it. Cotton plantation. But let's remember one thing, folks. In 1860, more Southerners were non-slave holders that made their money from herdsmen. They had cattle. Matter of fact, the South exported more revenue property in cattle than it did in cotton. And the cattle was being raised by people like Ron and our family. We were called the plain folk of the Old South, the common average Southerner.
And like with most things, Donnie, the United States Census, if you're going to try to find something to validate that, when you said a small portion of the population, United States Census says less than 10% of the population from South owned slaves.
Exactly.
So that always gives you question, what did the rest fight for?
Exactly. What did my great-grandfather? He was not a slaveholder.
Nor am I that I can find.
So, but the worst form of slavery is governmental slavery, and that's what our colonial forefathers fought against in 1776. That's what our Confederate forefathers fought against in 1861, and that's why we in the Sons of Confederate Veterans insist that people come look at this museum and see the other side of the story.
Now, you'd mentioned sugar earlier. There were sugar plantations, once again, Louisiana covered in them.
Right.
And according to that same census that I mentioned earlier, at least 700 in the city of New Orleans were freed people of color who owned slaves.
Absolutely.
And one of the largest sugar plantations in Louisiana was owned by a free person of color.
Absolutely. This is another part of history that
not justifying slavery by no means, but I'm just telling you history.
We have to tell the whole story.
You have to tell the whole story.
The little part that says the South is evil, the South
right.
is responsible for all the ills of America. That's what we're fighting against.
That's what we're trying to educate today. Yes, sir.
And you know, the very interesting thing about New Orleans and Louisiana, but it's also true for the rest of the South, is that the free people of color in New Orleans had, according to some scholars, Nobel-winning scholars, not just the Kennedy twins saying this, the free people of color in New Orleans had 50% more property value than the free people of color in New York City, which is not a southern state the last time I checked.
That's correct. Now, we have some other things on the timeline. Well, let's go take a look at those. All right, gentlemen.
When my mother was in college, she danced with Confederate veterans. To me, it wasn't that far away. You know, my father knew this. My mother knew this. Almost 50 years ago, I joined the Sons of Confederate Veterans. In those days, we weren't concerned about saving monuments or any of those things. That wasn't necessary. In fact, none of us had any remote idea that it would ever come up, or we would have done something then. We can't just sit there and react. We have to be proactive.
The Sons of Confederate Veterans is the direct heir of the United Confederate Veterans and the oldest hereditary organization for male descendants of Confederate soldiers. Organized at Richmond, Virginia in 1896, the SCV continues to serve as a historical, patriotic, and non-political organization dedicated to ensuring that a true history of the 1861 to 1865 period is preserved. Membership in the SCV is open to all male descendants of any veteran who served honorably in the Confederate Armed Forces.
Good Major, I've often said that it's history that gives us hope, and without that hope, I fear our nation will be extinguished. And we must preserve our history and our heritage. And through our writing, we have tried to do so. One of our books is called Appalachian Rebels. It's by Richard G. Brown and myself, Dave Chaltis, and you can find them on Amazon.com.
Appalachian Rebels is a compelling story of the 5th Kentucky Infantry that became the 10th Kentucky Mounted Rifles and later the 13th Kentucky Cavalry. Get your copy of Appalachian Rebels today at Amazon.com. I guess this is probably the part that I like the best, is you want to know where it all began as far as the war is concerned. And this anchor is one of the anchors from the ship that basically started the war.
This is true. This is a unique find that was donated to the museum. this is an anchor, one of the anchors from the Star of the West. Now, historians will understand the Star of the West, but most people may not remember their history that well. But the Star of the West was a ship sent by the Federals to try to reinforce Fort Sumter. Now, shortly after Lincoln took office, but there was an agreement, some call it an armistice. It was an agreement between the state of South Carolina and the federal forces to do nothing, to stand down and wait until there's a political solution to the issue. Lincoln couldn't wait, and the Star of the West was the first attempt to reinforce Fort Sumter. Well, the cadets at VMI that manned the barricades, they said, no, you're not coming, so they fired upon the Star of the West, drove it off. So that was really the first, that was before the, quote, firing on Fort Sumter. Was the firing on the Star of the West.
Yes, fired over the bow.
That's right.
Yes.
Didn't kill anyone. It was just warning. You stay back. This is Southern territory. We are a sovereign nation. Stay out. You are an invading force. Stay away.
Right.
And that's what the whole idea was. Now, this anchor was found in a field in the state of Mississippi. Of course, it was probably something to do with the Battle of Vicksburg, but somehow this was found up there. And I found it because I'm an Ole Miss. Don and I were born and raised in Mississippi, and our great-grandfather fought at the siege of Vicksburg. But the fact that it was found in a field in Mississippi sort of harkens back to the fact that the CSS Arkansas was also built in a flooded cornfield in Mississippi.
Oh, that's crazy.
So, who would have thought
that is crazy.
Is a great naval power?
It's crazy. It's crazy. I love it. And the interesting thing is, it was part of the Vicksburg campaign, but if you look at the map, there's a peninsula or an island that extends, and the boats or ships had to come around it and face the guns at Vicksburg. If you look at that island, the old maps from that era, you can see cornfields in that area. So it's possible it could have been those cornfields. So it's in that period. So
but that's a great artifact, and we're very proud of it.
Should be.
The National Confederate Museum. But I also wanted to point this out because it has not a direct link to the Star of the West, but this is a blow-up of when South Carolina seceded, passed its ordinance of secession, and notice where it says the Union is dissolved. And the union between South Carolina and the federal government is dissolved. And the reason it's so important because these are the exact same words that Virginia used when Virginia seceded from Great Britain.
That's right.
Before the July the 4th.
Yeah, correct.
Virginia seceded, and they announced the union that has existed before between Virginia and Great Britain. That union is dissolved. So I just think it's great that these two artifacts, this artifact is next to this verbiage, and of course a great write-up on the battle itself, or short skirmish.
I love it. Now we've got some more artifacts. I think we got what's called the Three Brothers or something for the Battle of Manassas. I believe it, and some artillery wheels or something.
We do have some artillery wheels, but it's from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let's go talk about the gospel.
Oh, yes, sir. All right, brother. All right. Be sure to join us again next week for part 2 of the National Confederate Museum on History Highway.
My crew keeps me on the road from episode to episode, 'cause they all know I got a million stories to tell. I'm no dinosaur, it's cool to explore what makes a country great and put the crack in the Liberty Bell. So take a ride down the history highway. We're headed back to the days of old. So take a ride down the history highway. I got the pedal to the metal and I'm letting this Chevy roll. I got the pedal to the metal and I'm letting